very good evening to you and welcome to Friday Conversations. I'm Matt.
And I'm Fiona.
Nice to be with you this evening. Just before we came live on YouTube, Clive, who's behind the cameras today, said, "Oh, Matt and Fiona, I hope you've come to the end of your conversation so that I could turn the microphones on." I nearly said, "Come on, Clive, we're here to talk." And we've only just got started. But we did have to keep quiet to let the titles play through. But anyway, good evening and a very warm welcome to you. Fiona, would you like to mention what we're talking about this evening and where to find it and everything?
Yeah. Well, we're still digging deeper in the Gospel of Luke, as we have been through these Friday evenings. So if you have a Gospel of Luke, you can open it up now. And just a little plug here for the Gospel of Luke that we're distributing through Wisbech at the moment, the special Wisbech edition. And if you want one of these, you can pick them up if you come to any of our meetings, or you can email us at hello@kingswisbech and we will happily give you one.
Yeah, and they're completely free of charge, so just get in touch and we will send you one, or we'll send you 10. Just let us know. We'd be more than happy to do that. But yes, we are discussing in this for the last few episodes, we've been looking at sort of central themes in the Gospel of Luke. Yes. And so we come to another one today.
Yes. Now Luke, right from the beginning of his gospel, makes the point that he has taken it upon himself to do a thorough research into the whole account of Jesus' life on earth, his death and his resurrection. And tonight we're actually coming to his resurrection. And Luke is giving us the account that that he's put together. And a lot of the sort of what we might call the evidence for the reality of Jesus' resurrection is here. I mean, Luke was a doctor, so he's quite a scientific mind. And he's also a very astute historian. So he's really looking for facts here, not fantasies and ideas. And so we're going to be looking at the kind of the reality of Jesus' resurrection tonight.
That'll be good. So if you have a Bible with you, we are basing our discussion on quite a few different stories, but you can all find them sort of around Luke 24. If you haven't got an actual Bible, don't worry, because you can look it up online. If you go to BibleGateway.com, you can find the Bible on there, or you can download the YouVersion app, and there's like hundreds of Bibles to choose from on there, so you can follow along with us if you'd like to this evening.
Right. Okay.
So where to begin? That is the question.
Well, probably by having a look at what they first discovered on that first day of the week, because Jesus had been crucified on the Friday. And the third day is early on the Sunday morning after the Sabbath is over, and some women are going to the tomb to try and anoint his body. A tomb in which he had been thoroughly sealed with a very large stone. So shall I read that bit?
Yes, that'll be good.
On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. And while they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them, and in their fright the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. So here's the first arrival of these women. Now it's interesting, I think, that Luke does not attempt to describe the event that actually nobody witnessed.
No, and none of them do they? None of the gospel writers do.
No, that's because nobody witnessed it. So in the first place, if they were
making
it
up, yeah, exactly,
you would definitely have put this in. You'd have made a big story about it, wouldn't you? But there's nobody mentions what nobody can describe.
And I find it also interesting as well that in this account, and also in all the others, is that women were the first ones
That's right.
to go to the tomb and discover that the tomb was empty and to be told that Jesus had risen. Why is that surprising? Well, for me, I think it's because if you were trying to spin a good yarn, if you were trying to sell a good story, and especially in that day and age and culture where women were seen to be less inferior, less important, and actually even sort of in witnessing in court, they're unreliable witnesses, all that kind of thing. Why on earth would you say women went and saw this and came and reported back? If you're trying to make your story sound really good and sound really sort of, I don't know, if you really want to make it really believable, don't say a woman said that, say a man said that, and then more people would be likely to believe you.
And actually, because otherwise, your readers in those days would have the same reaction that the 11 other disciples
Yes, exactly.
It said when they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles, but they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense.
These hysterical women coming back, overcome by grief and all the rest.
Exactly. It would have been dismissed as, that's just hysterical women. Just like the disciples did.
Exactly.
And then Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb and actually saw the strips of linen lying there by themselves and went away wondering to himself what had happened.
So if Luke was trying to spin a good story, make the headlines in the press or whatever, he certainly wouldn't say the women were the first witnesses.
No, nor that Peter still didn't get the point. That's the thing.
So from this we can start to see that actually what he's telling us is based on some sort of facts that's happened. This is how it went. And it's not just Luke who says the women were the first ones, other gospel writers as well, which kind of, all backs up what everyone else is saying here as well.
Yes, that he's going for what
authenticity,
for what he can, for actually what people have witnessed, not making something
or not hearsay, not just random make believe.
Right, so that's one of the first things. The very fact of the women and the fact of the disciples not instantly getting the point does tell you that this is not something that was made up by them. Okay, so let's go on now. And Peter, he looks in and he sees the strips of linen, because they'd wrapped his body in strips of linen. And amazingly, the body has gone,
but the
linen
clothes are still there.
Haven't. They're still there. So, that puts paid to the notion that it was grave robbers, because,
Does it say what the linen was like when they...
No, not in this one. John explains that the headpiece was laid aside by itself, and it,
Right. Okay.
But no, if we stick with Luke's account,
exactly.
He
That's
just said,
just
there
wondering
were
if
strips
it was
of linen
mentioned here.
lying there by themselves. So that.
And the whole sort of embalming process is just like.
Well, obviously they didn't embalm him. They had to.
Well, they just
that's
kind of.
what the women
they were going there to do.
To do that
kind of wrapped him up. It wasn't just like a cloth.
No.
Just sort of. There's the body, and we'll just throw a cloth over for now. It would have been sort of wound.
It would have been wrapped up. And then laid in the tomb.
Which then makes it and again, because you have all these people coming up with, he couldn't have risen because what about this, or what about that, or this could have happened, or that could have happened. And one of them, which I think even the Roman authorities started investigating, was the disciples must have removed it, must have stolen the body. And if you're trying to steal a body and make a quick getaway, you're not going to sit there at the scene of the crime and go, well, hang on, lads, before we carry this body out of here, before the Roman guards out here catch us, let's just unwind all this cloth and get it all off and put it in the corner and okay, now we can leave. Now, wouldn't you? You'd run in and say, okay, great, grab it, let's go.
Yeah, yes, but then quite what the point of that would have been.
Well, again, yes, I know.
And we might come to that a bit later.
Yeah. We could revisit that one.
Yes, we will, I think. Yeah.
And let's just ask people watching, if you use the live chat, and there are several sort of scenarios that people say to kind of try and disprove or the resurrection. I've got some of them written down here. Do you know of any, or why don't you type them in? So, for example, some people might say, "Oh well, the body was stolen." Okay.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
Are there others you know of that you want to type in for us?
Yes. But at this point, what we have is an empty tomb.
Yeah.
And nobody knows where the body has gone.
Yeah.
And the women have also heard some sort of angelic visitors telling them that he's alive.
And I think the empty tomb bit, that was, we can see that this is actually sort of an established fact by a number of things that happen. Yes, okay, the women go and they see the tomb's empty, all right, but we also have the authorities saying, oh well, they must have stolen the body. Why would they say that if the tomb still had a body in it?
That's right.
So for them, rather than saying, oh well, that's a load of nonsense, there's the body, it's a case of, oh crumbs, the tomb is actually empty.
Yes.
They must have taken, they must have stolen it somehow, because the fact was, it was empty.
Yeah. Well, that's what the chief priests, scribes, and Pharisees told the guards to say that the disciples came quietly in the night and stole the body while we were asleep or something like that, which, I know that's not in Luke, it's in one of the others. But yes, that goes to tell you that the authorities couldn't produce the body.
And they couldn't. And also later on, they start preaching Jesus' resurrection in Jerusalem, which is the very place where the body had just been buried. You wouldn't go around preaching, oh, Jesus has risen again, if the tomb was still full.
No.
Because people would say, oh, hang on, let's just go around the corner. Let's take a little look just to check. Yeah. And they'd see the body still there, and then, it would just be a nonsense.
Yes.
So I think we can gather from that an established fact of the thing is that the tomb was empty.
Yeah. Now here we are. Let me see. Maddie's made the comment, God had a way of proving that women are not stupid. Yeah, very true.
Yes.
Richard saying, Muslims say someone else, not Jesus, was crucified.
Right, okay.
Would still not quite solve the problem of this body, would it?
Well, yes, disappearing, that's true.
And I think, well, realistically, I think they would have recognised, given that his mother was at the foot of the cross, I think she'd have known if it wasn't her son.
Yes, and I think the Romans would have made pretty sure that they had the right person that had gone through all the trials and things.
Yeah, and here's Maggie saying, people say that Jesus wasn't really dead, so he came to life again and escaped. Unlikely he'd have been strong enough after all that awful beating and crucifixion. Yes, to move a stone, which one of the other Gospels tells us the women were wondering, how are we going to get that stone out of the way because it's large.
No, I've heard that one as well. And for me, the thing that does it for me, crucifixion and everything else is very grueling and a terrible way to die. The Romans were expert executioners, so they knew what they were doing. They knew if you were dead or alive, and they knew how to make it quick as well. If the person was still on the cross and they were saying, oh, come on, you're taking far too long to die, they'd come and break the legs. So
that's what they did on this occasion.
The other two.
Because actually, normally, people could be on crosses for days.
Yeah.
But because of the Jewish Passover and them not wanting
not allowed to do things and not wanting
things out there, that's why the two, again, it isn't Luke that tells us, it's the other Gospel writers that they did actually break the thieves' legs.
Yes.
But then they found Jesus was already dead.
Yes.
So they stuck a sword.
But now this is the thing, the spear that gets stuck into his side. For me, and coming up as well, it would get your heart as well. That spear, as well as going through your lungs. And so you've got all the beatings, you've got the crucifixion, you've got all of that, and then this jolly great big spear being skewered almost right through you, just to doubly make sure.
Yeah. And you've had nails put through your
waking up all of a sudden after all of that,
and thinking,
isn't going to happen.
Let me roll this stone aside and nip off, and then I'll go and convince everybody I've risen from the dead. Yeah. I don't think so.
No.
But then you see...
But some people do say.
Well, yes,
that.
But...
Yeah.
Yes.
And the jolly big stone as well, you can't move it.
The person crucified was put in the tomb. If it wasn't Jesus, it would still be there.
Yeah.
So yes, realistically, I think we need to get it clear that he did actually die.
He did actually die, yes.
Yes. And now his tomb is empty. So... Yes, that's where we're left at the moment. And then we get to the bit that you were preaching on last Sunday, these people walking on the road to Emmaus.
And the other thing, which kind of comes into that road to Emmaus story, which is interesting, is with all these ideas and things of, well, whatever, this could have happened, that could have happened. The disciples... or Jesus' followers were not expecting. No. They should have been. They should have been expecting it if they remembered what Jesus had told them and what the scripture said.
Or if they'd realised that he meant them to take.
They should, but they weren't. They were not expecting it because they saw Jesus die, and that was it. And they were grief-stricken, wondering about. So when the women come back and say, the women are shocked, first of all, to find the tomb empty. It wasn't like oh ho hooray, he's risen. Yeah. It was a case of, oh no,
who's taken his body?
What's going on?
Yeah.
They were surprised, and also when they went back and told the disciples, and they came running down because they were shocked. It was a big shock that this has happened. They weren't expecting Jesus to rise in this way. Maybe sort of at the end of time when the grand the whole resurrection would take. The Jews were expecting that.
Yes, they were expecting that.
But they weren't expecting this resurrection now.
No.
And so it was very shocking and surprising.
Yeah. Richard's made another point. Some people say the women got the wrong tomb. So I think if we just have a look back at the previous chapter, at the end of it, after Jesus is taken down from the cross, and Joseph of Arimathea takes the body, asks Pilate for the body, takes it down, wraps it in linen cloth, placed it in a tomb cut in the rock, one in which no one had yet been laid. And it says here, the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes and rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment.
So they knew where it was.
But on the first day of the week, these same women go back. Yeah. They actually watched where he was buried.
And there's a few other points to note on that one as well, is that Joseph of Arimathea, now he's named by Luke, not just some chap. And he was a member of the Sanhedrin. Yes. He was very high status in Jewish society, almost like the Supreme Court of the Jewish society. So here you've got this chap from the Supreme Court of Jewish society burying Jesus' body, and he's named as the one doing it. Yes. Jesus was dead, because you couldn't just go around saying, this really highly regarded guy has done this when he hasn't. No. They're not going to let you go around saying that if it didn't actually happen.
No, exactly. And we it tells us, he was a member of the council, a good and upright man who had not consented to their decision and action. He came from the Judean town of Arimathea and was waiting for the kingdom of God. So he was somebody who actually didn't want Jesus' body to suffer the fate of most crucified bodies, of being thrown onto the rubbish heap.
Yeah.
And then it could be.
And another point, okay, it's not in Luke, but another point of, is it the right tomb or the wrong tomb? A lot of fuss was made about Jesus. I mean, the Romans posted guards outside. They stuck a huge whacking great big seal on the tomb to make sure that no one tampered with it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're walking along, not every tomb has got Roman guards outside with seals and everything else. There's only one, the one that everyone's making a fuss about.
And it's been sealed. Well, again, you know, I know we're focusing mainly on Luke, but we know all the other bits as well.
Yeah.
But yes, it was actually the religious authorities had gone to Pilate and asked him to set a guard on the tomb because this guy had said he would rise again, and they were worried his disciples might come and steal the body. And
covering their bases.
Which is then, of course, the rumour they put about. But yes, it's... I don't think there's any doubt that he died, and it's so unlikely that the tomb wasn't empty. So we have this problem of what has happened to Jesus' body. Yeah. And that also is quite an interesting thing as well, because certainly when I was a child, I was brought up believing that, you know, this is this life, and then when you die, you go to somewhere called heaven, and that's a sort of spirit thing, and your body stays here. So we aren't talking about Jesus having gone off to heaven in that sense. I mean, we know that his spirit went to paradise when he died on the cross, because he said to the dying thief, as I was saying the other Sunday, you know, this day you will be with me in paradise. So as far as the sort of the out of body time was concerned.
And didn't he go to Hades as well and break the gates of?
Well, Hades incorporates paradise and some sort of prison type place. We don't get a lot of detail, but you know, Hades could be a good or a bad experience, basically. But anyway, it does tell us that Jesus, you know, when he died, he said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Yeah. So his spirit leaves the body at that point.
Yeah. The body remains.
The body remains behind. But now the body has disappeared. We're actually talking about the resurrection, not just the survival of the soul or anything like that. We're talking about the resurrection of the body, which is, well, obviously in this case, for people there, it was a verifiable fact. The body had gone.
The body had gone.
Yeah. So let's just
let's look at the, because Luke. I'm just looking at the time. That's why I'm kind of staring off into the clouds. There's a nice big clock on the wall up there.
What are you thinking to break now and then talk about? So what's happened? Well,
I'm thinking perhaps if we have a break, then because otherwise I think we'll get into the flow of it, and before you know it.
Okay. Well, it's a good. So far we've got an empty tomb.
We have an empty tomb. Yes, that's right. Good. Okay. All right. So we're going to have a break. There's some notices and a song, and we'll see you in 10 minutes or so. See you soon. Hello, welcome back to Friday Conversations. I think I need to enter the Royal Variety performance or something. A quick change, artist. Have you noticed I've worn 3 different outfits this evening and changed so quickly between them? It's magic.
Between your notices and your singing and
it's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're carrying our conversation, speaking about the resurrection, a proof of the resurrection from the Gospel of Luke. And just before the break, we had established the fact that the tomb was empty.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So now we're moving on to where people meet him alive again.
Yeah.
So yes, now you were preaching on this last Sunday.
To
Emmaus,
part of it,
first thing. So perhaps you can give us a little bit of a recap.
Okay, road to Emmaus. So there were 2 people, a guy called Cleopas, and people think possibly his wife, were walking on the road to Emmaus in the afternoon of the same day as the resurrection. So we have the woman going to the tomb and being surprised and telling the other disciples that the tomb was empty in the morning. And then later on in that day, Cleopas and his wife are walking to a nearby town called Emmaus to Jerusalem. And on the way, they meet a person. They don't know who this person is. And as they're walking along, they get chatting and they start telling the person, oh, you never believe what's just happened.
Well, yes, because he says, why are you looking so miserable?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they start explaining their reasons and what's going on and what's happened, and that some women went to the tomb that morning and said the body wasn't there, and
they had a vision of angels that said he was
all
alive.
the whole story.
Yeah.
And basically they were still quite upset that what's going on. We don't understand what's happening, and we're very upset and distressed by this.
Because obviously they had been hoping that he was the Messiah, the
political Messiah coming to kick the Romans out.
Or even the King of the Jews, who's coming to set up the kingdom of God on earth.
But he was killed, so how can that be?
Yes, until now suddenly we've got this mysterious happening.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he begins to talk to them about all that it says in the Old Testament scriptures that clearly point to him and to what has happened and to the fact that he would die and be raised again. Now, obviously they knew their Old Testament scriptures, but somehow the penny never dropped until he was explaining all this to them. It says, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself, because obviously, as you've guessed, it was Jesus. And then they approach the village and he's going to move on, but they invite him to come in, and then while he's at table with them, he breaks bread, and they
recognize him.
Yes, that's the thing. When their eyes are, they suddenly realize who he is. And then he disappears, and then they say this bit about our hearts were burning, weren't they, while he was talking, and then having spent all afternoon walking to Emmaus, they rush back
run all the way back again to tell the disciples,
to tell the rest of them, and there they find the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, yes, it's true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon. So as well as appearing to them on the way to Emmaus and at Emmaus, he's also appeared in Jerusalem, and in particular to Simon Peter. And then they tell them about, so now suddenly people have been beginning to see him. And as somebody else told us, Mary Magdalene was actually the first one to see him, but I suppose nobody believed her because she was a woman. But yes, now they're beginning to meet him and to recognise he is alive. Okay, so how are we going to explain this one away then?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you have him appearing here and disappearing and appearing there and disappearing. And a bit later, which I think we might deal with in a little bit more detail in a minute, he appears in a locked room. And then
well, in fact, just at this very point, as these two are telling them about meeting him on their way to Emmaus, and then the others say, yes, true, and he's met with Simon. And then while they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, peace be with you. He suddenly appeared in the very room.
So for me, immediately it starts to feel a bit sort of, really? Oh, it's getting a bit far-fetched. It's getting a bit kind of sci-fi. He's sort of here and he's there and he's not here and he's appearing and disappearing, and they could all be just kind of making it up or just seeing things or hallucinating
or whatever. Or it could be a ghost. If you believe in ghosts, and in fact,
or a spirit or something.
And in fact, that's what the disciples thought. They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. And I know people talk about, seeing their dead loved ones or whatever, and it's a kind of a spirit form,
or an apparition or something.
Yes. So I think we really need to deal with that.
We do. We need to deal with that first.
So obviously, it's a question of what sort of body is this? Because it can
do things that this body can't do.
Yeah, like if I want to come into a room, I have to come through the door, or perhaps climb through the window, or like the man got lowered through the roof. But you have to come through a barrier to come into a room. Whereas he was just there, which is very interesting, very different. And they're all frightened because, you know, obviously he had appeared to Simon, but I suppose this must be the first time most of the people in the room had seen him. And he says to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your mind? Look at my hands and my feet. It's I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." So he makes it quite clear, first of all, this is his physical body. Which is
and there's other physical aspects to these appearances. Like on the road to Emmaus, he breaks bread, he eats, and it all talks about boiled fish.
Yeah, that's coming up. That's
which is coming up.
Yes.
But again, an eating, a touching, a speaking.
Yes, a ghost can't do that.
He's physically there.
No, a ghost can't sort of do that.
And so how about the appearing and disappearing then? I've got my own theories on this.
Well, it would
which
seem,
relates to the type of body he now has.
Yes, it would seem that this body can be in heavenly realms or earthly realms. You know, that it can actually exist in both those realms, and of course,
and can move between the two.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I would use. I know realms is what's often used in the Bible. I quite like watching sci-fi films, and so but I would explain it dimensions, the spiritual dimension and a physical or earthly dimension, and the two actually coexist like alongside each other. It's not like you know, heaven or the spiritual dimension is way over there somewhere beyond the clouds, and here we are on earth. Actually the two interact with each other and affect each other and are coexisting, but are separate at the minute.
Yes, we need to understand that heaven is not somewhere way beyond the skies, you know, where you could potentially get.
Which is why when we pray and things can happen, and the two are linked and interact with each other.
That's right, yes. And you know, it's a realm that we don't see in the normal way of things. Well, it's like, you know, like at this moment, if you were watching the television, you would be able to see things that are happening far away. Well, in fact, the sort of the sound waves and things for radios, they're all around us, but you don't see them until you tune in.
Yes, exactly. That's a very good illustration. And so for me, Jesus' body quite clearly is a physical body, but it has been transformed. It's kind of been recreated, mirroring, showing us the start of this new creation, this new heaven, this new earth. That's to come. Is starting here in Jesus, and this physical body, he can actually move between the two dimensions, the spiritual dimension and the earthly dimension. He can just step from one into the other. So for us who just are existing right now in this dimension,
because we have bodies that can only exist on earth.
That's right.
These bodies
and can only see on earth.
Yes.
So all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's appeared, but actually he's just stepped from one dimension into the next.
Right. Yes.
And
has
back
appeared.
Again.
And when it talks about his return, like I think it's in Thessalonians, it talks about his appearing. You know, and so we need to sort of get rid of the notion that it's a kind of float down from somewhere up there,
sitting on a cloud.
It's actually reappearing. And we're actually seeing behind the scenes of where we are now. And obviously he must look a bit different, because like on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognise him.
But lots of places they don't recognise him at first.
Yes.
Well, like Mary in the garden didn't recognise him at first
she
either.
The gardener, didn't she? But then it's like he's different, and yet then once you realise it, you think, no, it is the same. So I think we need to understand a resurrection body it's the same body, but it's different and transformed.
It's transformed,
some way. Yeah.
Yes, because what you were saying in the break earlier was that there is a link to the body now, because I know there's some traditions and things that believe that if you die, you need to be buried in a physical body, because it's the physical body that gets raised again later on. But what if I get cremated? There isn't a physical body there to be raised. So how does that work?
Well, then it's like Paul talks about it in 1 Corinthians 15, for example, that actually the body that's buried, it's like a seed that's been planted. What comes up is that seed, but it's very different. It's much more than what was sown there. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, and you won't find that seed again.
And it's not going to be like a dead body, sort of walking around like a zombie.
No.
It's not going to be like that.
No, or even just like what it was before, because it's going to be something more than it was before, but not something.
And
less
God, the
than
Creator, is going to be recreating everything.
Yes.
The heavens and the earth, and not having them separate. He's going to be creating them and fusing them together, both dimensions together, isn't he? And our bodies are going to be part of that recreated process. So yes, still containing some of what we were, but changed and transformed.
Yes, and that, I think it's important we understand there is a connection.
Yeah.
So it matters what we do with it while we're in this body. It's not that sort of all this is irrelevant and we're floating off to some more spiritually real place or spiritually less real place in some people's estimation. Actually, we're going to have a body like he has, which can inhabit both. And obviously, at present, his body is in the heavenly realms, right at the control room point.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the things that obviously is different between his body and ours, or at least for everybody who dies more than 3 days before he returns, is that his body never decayed, whereas ours do decay, and awful things can happen to them, or they get burned, as you say, or they could get eaten by sharks, goodness knows what all.
Yeah.
But when it comes to resurrection day, the Lord can find the seed, and it will be what it's going to be. Okay, so it's like his body is like the prototype of something entirely new. Because as you mentioned earlier, lots of Jewish people did believe that there was going to be a day of resurrection at the end of time.
Over there somewhere far away.
When God would put everything right and bring justice on the earth, and the righteous dead would be raised and be part of that.
So that notion of resurrection was familiar to them.
Yes, and like when he raised Lazarus, and he'd said to Martha, don't you believe your brother will rise again? She says, I know he'll rise again at the last day. And then Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. It's like, no, actually, this is coming right into now. And so here we have the prototype for a whole new creation that's beginning here. So it's still physical and yet sort of transformed. You can touch him. There is a connection as well, because he says to them after this, he showed them his hands and feet. Well, why would he do that except say, look, you can see it's me, look, nail prints.
And our resurrection will be physical as well.
Yes.
Won't it?
Yes.
And the new earth will be a physical place. It won't be some spiritual thing.
No, that's right. And it's and again that connection there, that he still bears the marks of his crucifixion, and yet they're not deathly, ghastly things.
Or spurting out blood or whatever.
No. That's right. So that's really. Yes, so let me just see, was there anything? Oh yes, and then the bit about the broiled fish.
Yes.
Right. The fish. Yeah. Do you have anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took and ate it in their presence. Ghosts don't eat broiled fish. No. So yes, here, I mean, Luke has really kind of condensed a lot of appearances into a very short passage here. But what we gather is that during the period before the very last bit, when he ascends to the Father, that people were meeting with him. He could appear, he could disappear. He met with all sorts of different people. I forget which one of them tells us that he met with more than 500 at one time, at one point.
Yes, so, not in Luke, but yes, it is.
So there are lots of people who met the risen Christ.
Lots,
and didn't hallucinate and see a ghost. They actually met.
One question to ask, me kind of just asking it because some people might be thinking it. I think I have an answer to it myself, but let's just see. So, in all the accounts, Jesus appears to people who believed in him. He appeared to his followers and his disciples.
Yes.
Why didn't he appear to the chief priest in the temple or the Roman governor and kind of go, oi, you, ta-da, Here I am.
Yeah, like I would have done, but then he doesn't have the desire to sort of go,
why? Because obviously, well, if you had that kind of a proof, people might be more inclined to go, oh, okay. If the guy who was against him now says that they've seen him, then we'll believe.
But then they wouldn't, you see. Now, it's interesting because earlier this week, Lorna and I were looking at the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. And you know how Lazarus sort of asks Father Abraham to send somebody to send Lazarus to his brothers to warn them so that they don't land up in the mess he's in. And actually Jesus says, if they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, nor will they believe even if someone goes to them from the dead. Yeah. So what would be the point of him going there?
Because they won't believe it.
They're not. Yeah. Well,
they're not prepared.
And it's not as in believe it, as in accept the fact. They're not going to turn and put their faith in him because they don't want him to be alive. No. They don't want him to be the king. Mm-hmm. And so, there's no point to him appearing there. Yeah. That's not the purpose of him appearing to his disciples, is to show them, I have conquered death. Yeah. And you don't have to be afraid of it anymore.
I said I was.
Yes, that's right. And that's the thing that really comes out very clearly when we see what I call the bridge between the Gospel of Luke and Luke's next book, which is the Acts of the Apostles. Yeah. It begins with the ascension. This one ends with the ascension. And he's telling them, you've got to go and tell everybody that I'm alive, because repentance and forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. They needed to know he was alive. I'm going to send you what my Father has promised, that's the Holy Spirit, but stay in the city until you've been clothed with power from on high. And then he leads them out to Bethany, he lifts up his hands and blessed them, and then while he's blessing them, he left them and was taken into heaven. And again, we gather that means that he literally went off into heaven. There's the picture that we get in Daniel of someone coming on the clouds of heaven towards the royal throne. That's not somebody coming back from the royal throne, that's somebody going towards the royal throne where he's given a kingdom. And that they would instantly know that's the Messiah picture. So we have Jesus going back to heaven, and then they are waiting for the coming of the Spirit. Then they go out to preach to everyone, we have seen the risen Christ. We know, because this proves that he is the Christ. Yeah, he is the Messiah. This is the proof. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Going back to my sermon from a couple of weeks ago, that label on the cross, the King of the Jews, this is the proof that is actually true. Pilate put it there as a sort of a nasty mockery bit, and the rulers didn't like it, but actually it was true. So, and the fact of him being risen from the dead proves that he is who he claimed to be. Yeah, that's right. And so, yes, that means he's now ruling. Anyway, carry on. You were going to say something there.
Oh well, I'm just trying to find it, because earlier on in Luke, which kind of ties in with what you've just said. Luke 18. All right. I hope it's the right 31 to 33. 31 to so this is when he's predicting his death, and Jesus took the 12 aside and told them, we are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of Man will be fulfilled. He'll be handed over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, insult him, and spit him. They will flog him and kill him. On the third day he will rise again. The disciples didn't understand any of this. Its meaning was hidden from them, and they didn't know what he was talking about. But my point here is just saying that even Jesus told them that he must be crucified, but in the same breath he must therefore rise again. Yes. For him to be the Son of Man. Yes. And Son of Man as in not just a human, but Son of Man as in sort of all the kingly and heavenly ramifications that title carries as well. So for him to be the Son of Man, he must die, but he must rise again. And so by rising again, it proves, as you say, he is who he says he is. He is the Son of Man. He is the Messiah.
Yes.
Or the Christ. The Christ is just another name for Messiah.
And the fact that these people saw him, it's not that, because again, I've read a lot of different commentaries in my time, and some of them, they, in a spiritual sense, Jesus was still there with them. They just felt that somehow it would continue, and so they're kind of using their imaginations a little too much. Well, okay, you might theorize like that, but when the chips are down and they're beating you and stoning you and cutting your head off and crucifying you, quite literally, as some of them, that's not...
If it wasn't true, you would say, okay guys,
that.
I was making it up. Please stop.
That's right. And when you see these, especially, when you see in the early chapters of Acts, these very ordinary men who are suddenly so convinced that Jesus has conquered death, and therefore they don't need to be afraid of it, that Jesus really is the Christ, that they're prepared to stand before ruling councils, they're prepared to face anything because it's so important to spread this, because they knew they had met him. Now, to me, I have to admit, this is always my go-to when the doubts come. Because how you feel, sometimes you can feel so inspired, other times it all sort of seems like you think, well, is it really true? This to me is is my go-to, because this is kind of, as far as I can see, it's objective. Nothing explains the rest of the New Testament and the subsequent history of Christianity and the church. Nothing explains that if people didn't actually meet the risen Christ. And so really, however unlikely it may seem, any other theory falls down.
And I think what we must say at this point is, yes, we have all this in the Bible, and yes, we have these proofs and examples and eyewitness testimonies and everything else, but there still comes a point for all of us where we need to choose to believe it or not. Where it boils down to an act of faith at the end of the day. And yes, no matter how you sort of try to dig down to it, and that's important, because faith is very important to God. And so if we could completely and utterly explain everything and cross all the T's and dot all the I's, where faith was no longer a requirement, I don't think that would work so well. So we still need, Clive's waving at us behind the camera saying, it's time up. We've got like 2 minutes left. We are aware, Clive. We will finish on time, I promise. But I think I think that point of faith needs to be reached.
That is the thing. It's when your eyes are opened that you understand, and that is when you put your faith in him. But one thing that this really makes clear to me is it is not unreasonable either. It isn't a case of you have to kind of either be somebody with a very low IQ or else you have to put aside your intellect and your understanding and reasoning in order to be able to believe this. Actually, while there's much that is mind-boggling, the resurrection is a reasonable thing. And in fact, it's, in my view, the most reasonable explanation for what follows on and for what came before. And it just all hangs together. And so that's why I sort of think, well, whatever else I don't understand, of this thing I am utterly, utterly sure that Jesus bodily rose from the dead and is alive. And if that's true, he is who he says he is, and the other things follow on from that.
There we go, Clive. We told you we would finish on time.
So good night, everyone.
Thank you so much for watching. We will be back next week. It won't be Fiona and I. There'll be other people having the Friday conversation at Friday at 7:30 on our King's Church YouTube channel. That will be the final one before Christmas. Then we will be returning again in the new year. So thank you for watching tonight, and we do hope that you'll come back again for the last one before Christmas next week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.